In the pre-dawn darkness of Fort Carson's helicopter hangar, Staff Sergeant Jessica Torres pressed her ear against the engine cowling of a Black Hawk. While other mechanics relied on computers and manuals, Jessica trusted something far more reliable, her ability to hear what machines were trying to tell her. The faint metallic whisper in the transmission housing made her frown. Something was wrong. Something the diagnostic equipment couldn't detect yet. But would anyone listen to a woman who claimed she could hear trouble coming? The hangar lights flickered on as Jessica pulled her coveralls over her uniform. Around her, the morning crew was already getting to work. Sergeant Mike Rodriguez rolled out from under a Chinook, oil stains covering his hands. "Torres, you're on Black Hawk maintenance today," he called out. "Bird's been making some noise on startup." Jessica grabbed her toolbox and walked to the aircraft. The Black Hawk sat silent in the harsh fluorescent light. She ran her hand along the fuselage, feeling for vibrations that shouldn't be there. Then she knelt beside the engine compartment and pressed her ear against the metal. "What are you doing?" Specialist Danny Chin appeared beside her, holding a diagnostic tablet. "I already ran the computer checks. Everything's green." "Just listening," Jessica said, moving to a different spot on the engine housing. Danny laughed. "Listening? Come on, Torres. This isn't the Stone Age. We've got equipment for this stuff." Jessica heard it then, a faint grinding sound, barely noticeable. Like sand between two pieces of metal. She stood up and opened the engine compartment. Her hands moved quickly, checking connections and fluid levels. "The transmission's going to fail," she said. "Probably within the next 10 flight hours." "Based on what?" Danny waved his tablet. "Every diagnostic says this bird's ready to fly." "Based on what I heard." Jessica pointed to the transmission housing. "There's metal debris in the oil. The gears are wearing faster than they should." Danny shook his head. "You can't diagnose transmission problems by listening to them, Torres. That's not how it works." Sergeant Rodriguez walked over, wiping grease off his hands. "What's the holdup?" "Torres thinks she can hear transmission problems," Danny said. "Wants to ground a perfectly good aircraft." Rodriguez looked at Jessica. "You sure about this?" "I'm sure," Jessica said. "Something's breaking down in there. If we don't fix it now, we'll be doing an emergency landing later." "The diagnostics are clean," Danny insisted. "Look at the numbers." Rodriguez studied the tablet, then looked at Jessica. "Torres, you've got good instincts, but we can't ground aircraft based on hunches. If the computers say it's good to fly, it flies." Jessica felt the familiar weight of not being believed. "At least let me drain the transmission oil. If I'm right, you'll see metal particles." "We don't have time for that," Rodriguez said. "This bird's scheduled for the training exercise tomorrow. Major Williams wants all aircraft ready." 5 minutes, Jessica said. "That's all I need." Rodriguez checked his watch. "Fine. 5 minutes. But when you don't find anything, I don't want to hear about your special hearing again." Jessica grabbed a drain pan and crawled under the aircraft. She could hear Danny and Rodriguez talking above her. "She's always doing this," Danny said. "Acting like she knows more than the equipment." "Maybe she does," came another voice. Jessica recognized Corporal Lisa Park, one of the few other women in the unit. "Torres has been right before." "A broken clock is right twice a day," Danny replied. "Doesn't mean we should tell time by it." Jessica positioned the drain pan and loosened the transmission drain plug. Dark oil began to flow out. She held her breath and waited. Then she saw them, tiny flecks of metal swirling in the oil. "Rodriguez," she called out. "Come look at this." The sergeant crouched down beside her. Jessica pointed to the drain pan. "See those metal particles? That's what I was hearing. The transmission's eating itself." Rodriguez studied the oil closely. The metal flakes caught the light like glitter. "Well, I'll be damned," he said quietly. Jessica crawled out from under the aircraft and stood up. Danny stared at the drain pan, then at his tablet. "How did you know?" he asked. "I listened," Jessica said simply. The sound was different. Rougher than it should be. Rodriguez nodded slowly. "All right, Torres. You made your point. Ground this bird and start the transmission replacement." As Jessica gathered her tools, she heard the other mechanics talking in low voices. Some sounded impressed. Others sounded skeptical. She'd proven herself again, but she knew it wouldn't be the last time she'd have to. The morning sun was starting to filter through the hangar windows. In a few hours, the briefing for tomorrow's training exercise would begin. Jessica looked at the grounded Black Hawk and wondered what other problems she'd hear that no one else would believe. She picked up her toolbox and walked toward the next aircraft. There was always more work to do. The briefing room filled with the sound of folding chairs and rustling papers. Jessica sat in the back row, her maintenance clipboard balanced on her knee. Around her, pilots and crew chiefs talked quietly about the day's exercise. Major Williams walked to the front of the room, his boots clicking on the concrete floor. "Listen up, people. Today's joint training exercise with civilian disaster response teams is the real deal. We're simulating earthquake response in the Colorado Springs area." He pointed to a map on the wall. Multiple casualties, collapsed buildings, civilian evacuations. The National Guard will be watching our performance closely. Jessica studied the flight schedules on her clipboard. 8 helicopters were assigned to the exercise. She'd personally inspected 6 of them this morning, but 2 others had been signed off by different mechanics. "Torres," Major Williams called out. "Aircraft status?" Jessica stood up. 7 birds are ready to fly, sir. 1 Black Hawk is grounded for transmission replacement. That's the one you flagged yesterday? Williams asked. "Yes, sir. Metal debris in the oil. Transmission failure was imminent." Williams nodded. "Good catch. What about the others?" "All aircraft are mission ready, sir. But I'd like to do one more inspection round before takeoff." Sergeant Rodriguez shifted in his seat. "Torres, we've already done the pre-flight checks. Everything's signed off." "I know, Sergeant. But I noticed some unusual vibrations in 2 of the Chinooks yesterday. I want to make sure they're not developing problems." Captain Sarah Mitchell, one of the senior pilots, turned around. "What kind of vibrations?" "Main rotor bearing noise on Chinook 27. And the hydraulic pump on 29 sounds rough." The diagnostics were clean on both aircraft, Sergeant Baker called out from the middle of the room. "I signed off on them myself." Jessica felt the familiar tension building. "I'm not questioning your work, Sergeant. I just want to double-check before we put them under operational stress." "Are you saying I don't know how to do my job?" Baker's voice carried an edge. "I'm saying I hear things that sometimes don't show up on the computers," Jessica replied evenly. Major Williams held up his hand. "Enough. Torres, you've got 30 minutes for additional inspections. Everyone else, final equipment checks and crew assignments." The room began to empty. Jessica gathered her papers and headed for the door. Behind her, she heard Baker talking to Rodriguez. "She's always second-guessing everyone's work. Acts like she's the only one who knows these aircraft." "She was right about that transmission," Rodriguez said quietly. "Even a blind squirrel finds a nut sometimes." Jessica pushed through the hangar doors and walked to Chinook 27. The massive helicopter sat motionless on the tarmac. She climbed up to the engine compartment and pressed her ear to the main rotor assembly. There it was, a faint grinding sound, almost masked by the ambient noise of the busy airfield. She moved to the hydraulic pumps and listened carefully. The second pump was running rough, working harder than it should. "Find anything?" Captain Mitchell appeared beside the aircraft. "Both problems are still there," Jessica said. "The bearing noise is getting worse, and the hydraulic pump is struggling." Mitchell frowned. "How bad?" "Bad enough that I wouldn't want to push these birds hard today. If we're doing real disaster response, We need aircraft that can handle heavy loads and extended flight time. Can you fix them? Jessica checked her watch. Not in 30 minutes. But I can adjust the maintenance logs to limit their operational parameters. Lighter loads, shorter flight times. Do it, Mitchell said. Better safe than sorry. Jessica pulled out her maintenance forms and began writing. Around her, flight crews were doing final preparations. Pilots studied maps while crew chiefs loaded medical supplies and rescue equipment. The morning sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the airfield. Jessica finished her paperwork and walked back to the hangar. Through the radio speakers, she heard the control tower beginning to coordinate the exercise. All units, this is base operations. Exercise Broken Arrow is now active. Repeat, Exercise Broken Arrow is active. Jessica looked up at the clear blue sky and listened to the distant sound of helicopters starting their engines. Everything seemed normal, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this training exercise was about to become something much more serious. Jessica was checking hydraulic fluid levels when the ground started moving. At first, she thought it was just the vibration from a helicopter landing. But then the hangar began to sway. Earthquake, someone shouted. The concrete floor rolled beneath her feet like ocean waves. Jessica grabbed the aircraft's landing gear to steady herself. Around the hangar, tools crashed to the floor. The lights flickered and went out. The shaking lasted 30 seconds. When it stopped, Jessica heard car alarms going off across the base. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Everyone okay? Rodriguez called out in the darkness. Voices answered from around the hangar. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in red shadows. Jessica's radio crackled to life. All units, this is base operations. We have a magnitude 7.2 earthquake. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Jessica looked at the aircraft around her. The helicopters appeared undamaged, but she knew the real test would come when they tried to fly them. Torres, get those birds ready to fly, Rodriguez ordered. We're going from exercise to real emergency response. Jessica grabbed her toolbox and ran toward the flight line. Outside, she could see smoke rising from Colorado Springs. The training exercise had just become a real disaster. Major Williams's voice came over the radio. All flight crews, report to your aircraft. We're launching immediate search and rescue operations. Jessica climbed into the first helicopter and began her inspection. The engine started normally, but she could hear something wrong in the transmission. The earthquake had shifted something loose. Problem with this bird, she called out to the pilot. Transmission's making noise. How bad? Captain Mitchell asked. Bad enough. I wouldn't fly it without repairs. How long? Jessica listened to the engine again. 2 hours, minimum. We don't have 2 hours, Mitchell said. People are trapped in that city. Then we'll have to use the other aircraft, Jessica said. But we need to be careful about loads and flight times. She moved to the next helicopter. This one sounded better, but the hydraulic system was running rough. The same problem she'd identified that morning, now made worse by the earthquake. This one's marginal, she told the pilot. Light loads only, and don't push it hard. Across the tarmac, she could see Major Williams's helicopter spinning up. He was leading the first rescue mission into the city. Jessica watched as the aircraft lifted off and turned toward the smoke. 20 minutes later, Williams's voice came over the radio. It was tight with pain. Base operations, this is Eagle 1. We're going down. Engine failure on approach to the hospital. Mayday, mayday. Jessica ran to the radio in the maintenance truck. Eagle 1, this is maintenance. What's your status? We're down hard, Williams replied. Aircraft is totaled. I've got multiple injuries, including myself. Need immediate medical evacuation. Rodriguez grabbed the radio. Sir, what are your orders for continuing the mission? There was a long pause. When Williams spoke again, his voice was weak. I'm unconscious half the time. Can't command from here. Someone else needs to take over. Jessica looked around the hangar. The other officers were either flying missions or dealing with their own emergencies. The senior sergeants were focused on keeping aircraft running. Who's in charge now? Corporal Park asked. Chain of command, Rodriguez said. Captain Mitchell is the senior pilot still flying. But Mitchell was already airborne, dealing with her own rescue mission. Jessica listened to the radio chatter. Multiple aircraft were reporting mechanical problems. The earthquake had caused more damage than they'd initially thought. Base operations, this is Chinook 2-7. We're experiencing severe vibrations. Request immediate return to base. Jessica recognized the helicopter. The same one she'd flagged for bearing problems that morning. Under the stress of heavy rescue loads, the problem had gotten worse. 2-7, this is base operations. We need you to continue your mission. We have civilians trapped. Negative, base operations. This bird is coming apart. We're returning now. Jessica grabbed her radio. 2-7, this is maintenance. What's your fuel state? Enough to get home if we don't push it. Copy that. Reduce power and come straight in. I'll have a crew ready. She turned to Rodriguez. Sergeant, we're losing aircraft faster than we can fix them. And we don't have anyone coordinating the maintenance with the rescue operations. Rodriguez looked overwhelmed. What do you mean? I mean someone needs to match aircraft capabilities with mission requirements. We're sending damaged helicopters on missions they can't handle. That's not our job, Torres. We fix them, they fly them. It is our job when the aircraft are breaking down because we're not using them properly. Jessica looked at the radio, listening to the chaos of multiple rescue missions trying to coordinate without proper leadership. Aircraft were being pushed beyond their limits. People were trapped in the city. And the person who knew these helicopters better than anyone was standing in a maintenance hangar, waiting for orders. She picked up her toolbox and walked toward the aircraft. Someone had to take charge of this situation before more people got hurt. Jessica walked to the radio console and pressed the transmit button. All aircraft, this is base maintenance. Report your current status and fuel levels. Who is this? Came a voice from one of the helicopters. Staff Sergeant Torres, Aircraft Maintenance. I need to know what condition your birds are in. Rodriguez appeared beside her. Torres, what are you doing? Someone needs to coordinate aircraft capabilities with mission requirements, Jessica said. We're losing helicopters because we're not managing them properly. The radio crackled with responses. 3 aircraft reported mechanical problems. 2 were running low on fuel. One pilot said his helicopter was shaking so badly he could barely control it. All aircraft with mechanical issues, return to base immediately, Jessica ordered. No exceptions. Base maintenance, this is Rescue 4, came Captain Mitchell's voice. We have civilians trapped in a collapsed building. I can't leave them. Jessica looked at her maintenance logs. Mitchell was flying the Chinook with the hydraulic problems. Rescue 4, what's your current load? 12 survivors, maximum capacity. Copy that. Reduce your load to 8 people and make 2 trips. Your hydraulic system can't handle full capacity right now. Negative, base maintenance. Every minute counts. These people are critically injured. Jessica felt the weight of the decision. She knew the aircraft's limitations better than anyone. Rescue 4, if you lose hydraulic pressure with a full load, you'll crash. Then nobody gets rescued. There was silence on the radio. Then Mitchell's voice came back. Roger, base maintenance. Reducing load to 8 and making 2 trips. Rodriguez stared at Jessica. You just overruled a senior officer. I just saved lives, Jessica replied. Mine isn't about rank right now. It's about getting people home safely. The radio buzzed with activity. Jessica began organizing the chaos. She matched aircraft capabilities with mission requirements, routing the most reliable helicopters to the most dangerous rescues. The damaged aircraft got lighter loads and shorter flights. "Torres, you need to see this," Corporal Park called from across the hangar. Jessica walked over to where Park was working on the return Chinook. The helicopter's transmission was leaking oil, and metal shavings covered the ground beneath it. "How long has it been like this?" Jessica asked. "Probably started during the earthquake," Park said. "But it got worse under operational stress. If they'd kept flying with full loads, this transmission would have seized completely." Jessica nodded. Her decision to ground the aircraft had prevented a catastrophic failure. She walked back to the radio console and keyed the microphone. "All aircraft, this is base maintenance. I'm establishing new operational parameters. No aircraft flies without my approval. No missions are accepted without load and flight time clearance from maintenance." "Base maintenance, this is Rescue 2, came an unfamiliar voice. "Who gave you authority to make operational decisions?" Jessica took a deep breath. "The situation gave me authority. We've got injured people counting on these machines. I know what each aircraft can do, and I know their limitations. Right now, that's more important than rank." She heard muttering on the radio, but no one challenged her directly. The rescue operations continued, but now with better coordination. Jessica tracked each aircraft's condition, flight time, and fuel consumption. She made decisions based on mechanical capabilities, not just mission urgency. "Base maintenance, this is Rescue 7, came a pilot's voice. "We have a problem. Engine warning lights are on, but we're carrying critical patients to the hospital." Jessica checked her logs. Rescue 7 was flying one of the aircraft she'd flagged for potential problems. "Rescue 7, what's your distance to the hospital?" 2 minutes out. "Continue to hospital, then return to base immediately. Do not accept any additional missions." "Copy that, base maintenance." Jessica turned to Rodriguez. "Sergeant, I need you to coordinate ground crew assignments. We're going to be doing a lot of quick repairs and turnarounds." Rodriguez hesitated. "Torres, I'm not sure about this. You're making command decisions without proper authority." "Look around, Sergeant," Jessica said. "Command structure is broken. Major Williams is injured. The other officers are either flying missions or dealing with their own emergencies. Someone has to coordinate this operation, and right now, I'm the person who knows these aircraft best." She pointed to the radio console. "Every decision I'm making is based on keeping these helicopters flying and keeping people alive. If you have a better idea, I'm listening." Rodriguez looked at the organized chaos around them. Aircraft were landing, being quickly serviced, and taking off again. The rescue operations were running more smoothly than they had since the earthquake hit. "All right, Torres," he said finally. "But you're taking full responsibility for this." "I already am," Jessica replied. The radio crackled with another mission request. Jessica looked at her aircraft status board, calculating which helicopter could handle the load and flight time. Outside, she could hear the sound of rotors as another rescue mission prepared to launch. She picked up the microphone and began coordinating the next phase of the operation. 3 hours into the rescue operation, Jessica's worst fears were coming true. The radio crackled with emergency calls from multiple aircraft. "Base maintenance, this is Rescue 3. We've got hydraulic failure. Can barely control the aircraft. Rescue 6 here. Engine oil pressure dropping fast. We need to land now. Base maintenance, Rescue 2. Transmission warning lights are on. What are my options?" Jessica looked at her status board. Half the helicopter fleet was either grounded or operating with serious mechanical problems. The earthquake had damaged more than just buildings, it had pushed every aircraft beyond its normal limits. "Rescue 3, what's your current location?" she asked. "Downtown, about 5 minutes from base. We've got 8 injured civilians on board." Jessica calculated quickly. Without hydraulic assistance, the pilot would need all his skill just to land safely. Rescue 3, reduce speed and altitude. Take the most direct route to base. I'll have medical teams standing by. She turned to Park. Get the emergency crews ready. We're going to have hard landings. Park nodded and ran toward the medical station. Jessica keyed the radio again. Rescue 6, what's your fuel situation? Enough for maybe 10 more minutes of flight time. Copy that. There's an emergency landing zone 2 miles south of your position. I'm sending the coordinates now. Jessica plotted the location on her map and radioed the information. She was juggling multiple emergencies while trying to keep the rescue operation running. Torres, Rodriguez called out. We've got a problem. The civilian disaster coordinator is here. He wants to know why we're not using all available aircraft. Jessica looked up to see a man in a suit walking toward her. His face was red with frustration. I'm Director Peterson from Emergency Management, he said. I understand you're grounding perfectly good helicopters while people are dying in the city. Jessica set down her radio. Sir, these aircraft aren't perfectly good. They're operating under emergency conditions with multiple mechanical problems. The military told us we'd have full helicopter support, Peterson said. We've got a school collapsed with children trapped inside. Every minute counts. And that's exactly why I'm being careful with these aircraft, Jessica replied. If we lose a helicopter during a rescue, then no one gets saved. Peterson pointed to a Black Hawk sitting on the tarmac. That helicopter looks fine to me. Why isn't it flying? Because the transmission is failing, Jessica said. I can hear metal grinding in the gears. It might make one more flight, or it might seize up completely. Might isn't good enough, Peterson said. We need certainty. Jessica felt her patience wearing thin. Sir, with respect, uncertainty is what I'm trying to manage. I know these aircraft better than anyone. If I say a helicopter isn't safe to fly, it's not safe to fly. Rodriguez stepped forward. Director, Staff Sergeant Torres has been right about every mechanical problem she's identified today. Maybe we should listen to her. Peterson looked between them. Fine. But I need to know when that aircraft will be available. Jessica walked to the Black Hawk and opened the engine compartment. The transmission housing was hot to the touch, and she could smell burning oil. She pressed her ear to the metal and listened carefully. 2 hours, she said finally. Maybe 3 if we can get the right parts. We don't have 3 hours, Peterson said. Then we'll have to work with what we have, Jessica replied. I can give you 2 aircraft that are reliable for heavy lifting. 3 more that can handle light loads. That's what we've got. Peterson walked away, talking rapidly into his cell phone. Jessica turned back to her radio console. Base maintenance, this is Rescue 4, came Captain Mitchell's voice. We need to talk. Go ahead, Rescue 4. I'm at the collapsed school. The situation is worse than reported. We've got at least 20 children trapped, and the building is still shifting. I need maximum lift capacity. Jessica looked at her aircraft status. The only helicopter capable of maximum lift was the one with the failing transmission. She closed her eyes and listened to the sounds around her. Aircraft engines, radio chatter, the distant wail of sirens. Rescue 4, stand by, she said. Jessica walked to the Black Hawk and climbed into the cockpit. She started the engine and listened carefully. The transmission noise was getting worse, but the aircraft was still flyable. She shut down the engine and grabbed her toolkit. What are you doing? Rodriguez asked. I'm going to modify the transmission oil cooling system, Jessica said. If I can keep the temperature down, we might get one more heavy lift mission out of this bird. Is that safe? Safe enough, Jessica said. But the pilot needs to know the risks. Jessica worked quickly, rerouting cooling lines and adjusting oil pressure settings. It wasn't a permanent fix, but it might buy them the time they needed. Rodriguez, get me Captain Williams on the radio, she said. The best pilot we have. Williams is still grounded with injuries, Rodriguez replied. Then who's our next best pilot for precision flying? Probably Lieutenant Jackson. He's young, but he's got steady hands. Jessica wiped grease from her hands and picked up the radio. Base operations, this is maintenance. I need Lieutenant Jackson for a special mission. Copy that, maintenance. Jackson is en route. Jessica looked at the modified Black Hawk. The transmission would hold together for one more flight, maybe two if they were lucky. But she needed to be sure Jackson understood what he was getting into. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see a young pilot approaching. You wanted to see me, Sergeant? Lieutenant Jackson, I need you to fly this bird to the collapsed school. Maximum lift capacity, but there's a problem. The transmission is failing. Jackson looked at the helicopter. How bad? Bad enough that this might be its last flight, Jessica said. I've done what I can to extend its life, but I need you to know the risks. Jackson nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Jessica felt the weight of the decision. She was about to send a pilot into danger with a damaged aircraft. But 20 children were trapped, and this was their best chance. Get those kids out, she said. And bring everyone home. Jackson walked toward the helicopter. Jessica watched him go, then turned back to her radio. The mission was just beginning. Jessica stood beside the radio console, listening to Lieutenant Jackson's voice as he approached the collapsed school. The modified Black Hawk was holding together, but she could hear the strain in the engine noise through the transmission. Base maintenance, this is Rescue 1. I'm over the school site. The building is partially collapsed, but I can see movement inside. Going to need multiple lifts. Copy that, Rescue 1. How's the aircraft performing? Transmission is rough, but manageable. I can feel it in the controls. Jessica watched her instruments. The helicopter's systems were pushed to their limits, but her modifications were working. The transmission temperature was staying just below the danger zone. Rescue 1, you've got maybe 30 minutes before that transmission seizes up completely, she said. Make them count. Roger that, base maintenance. Jessica coordinated the other rescue aircraft while Jackson worked at the school. One by one, the helicopters she'd kept flying brought survivors back to base. Her systematic approach to matching aircraft capabilities with mission requirements had kept the operation running. Base maintenance, this is Rescue 1. I've got 18 children and 3 adults secured. One more lift should get everyone. Jessica checked her calculations. The transmission had been running hot for 25 minutes. The modified cooling system was failing. Rescue 1, you're approaching critical limits. How much more weight? 2 children and 1 adult teacher. She's unconscious, multiple injuries. Jessica closed her eyes and listened to the engine noise through the radio. The grinding sound was getting worse. But 3 people were still trapped. Rescue 1, you're clear for 1 more pickup. Then come straight home, no detours. Copy that, base maintenance. Going for final lift. Jessica held her breath as Jackson maneuvered the helicopter for the last rescue. Through the radio, she could hear the engine struggling. The transmission was barely holding together. Got them, Jackson's voice crackled through the static. All survivors secured. Heading home. Outstanding, Rescue 1. Bring them home. Jessica watched the helicopter approach the base. Even from a distance, she could see it was flying differently. The transmission was finally giving up. Jackson's voice came through the radio, tight with concentration. Base maintenance, I'm losing power. Controls are getting harder to manage. You're almost here, Rescue 1. Just hold it together for 2 more minutes. The Black Hawk touched down heavily on the tarmac. Jessica could hear the transmission making horrible grinding noises as Jackson shut down the engine. He brought everyone home, but the aircraft was finished. Medical teams rushed to help the survivors. Jessica walked over to the helicopter and placed her hand on the transmission housing. It was too hot to touch for more than a second. Jackson climbed out of the cockpit, his flight suit soaked with sweat. "That was the roughest flight I've ever made," he said. "But we got them all." "Nice flying, Lieutenant," Jessica said. "You pushed this bird exactly as far as it would go. How did you know it would hold together?" Jessica looked at the destroyed transmission. "I didn't. But I knew it was worth the risk." Over the next hour, the rescue operation began to wind down. The other aircraft landed safely, and Jessica supervised the post-flight inspections. Despite the mechanical problems, every helicopter had made it back to base. Director Peterson approached her as she was filling out maintenance reports. "Sergeant Torres, I owe you an apology. Your aircraft management saved lives today." "Thank you, sir. Just doing my job." "No, you did much more than that. You took command when leadership was needed. The city owes you a debt." Jessica nodded and continued writing. She wasn't comfortable with praise, but she was satisfied with the results. Every aircraft had done its job, and everyone had come home. "Torres," came a familiar voice. Jessica looked up to see Major Williams approaching on crutches. His arm was in a sling, but he was walking. "Major," Jessica said, standing up. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Williams said. "But I'm alive, thanks to good people doing their jobs." "I heard about what you did today." "I just coordinated maintenance with flight operations, sir." Williams looked at the helicopters lined up on the tarmac. Most showed signs of hard use, but they were all accounted for. "Staff Sergeant Torres, I've led men into combat, but I've never seen leadership like yours. You didn't just fix machines today, you saved lives by knowing exactly what those machines could do." Jessica felt a flush of pride, but she kept her voice steady. "Thank you, sir. These aircraft are good machines. They just needed someone who understood their limits. And their possibilities," Williams added. "I'm recommending you for promotion and a commendation. What you did today was exceptional." Rodriguez appeared beside them. "Torres, the final aircraft inspections are complete. We saved every bird except the one transmission. Not bad for a day's work." Jessica looked around the hangar. Her maintenance crews were already beginning repairs on the damaged helicopters. By tomorrow, most of them would be ready to fly again. "Not bad at all," she said. As the sun set over the base, Jessica walked back to her workspace. The hangar was quieter now, filled with the familiar sounds of tools and machinery. She picked up her stethoscope and pressed it against the engine of a nearby helicopter. The engine sounded healthy. Strong. Ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. Jessica smiled and got back to work. Jessica's story reminds us that true leadership often comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the person who knows the job best is the one who should be leading it. If you enjoyed hearing about Jessica's courage and determination, please give this video a like and subscribe for more inspiring stories. I'd love to hear in the comments about times you've seen quiet competence triumph over doubt. What did you think of Jessica's leadership style?